So we'll start breaking up these long videos into shorter ones. So we have 3 sessions in this module or tutorial 3. So we're looking at page layout using CSS pages. So first we'll create a reset style sheet, then we'll look at different layout designs, and then in session 2 there are grid-based layouts, and finally there is positioning. So let's look and see here's our visual overview. So you'll use a starter file and you add all of this, and so it's color coordinated. So here's your body, so here's our nav, here are some sections, and so on. So read over this, and so this will be our final product. So again, you see there is a header image. Here is a navigation area, and like I told you before, this is actually done as a bulleted list, and then they take the bullets away and they take the block display away. And so here we have 2 columns. So we have text flowing over here on the left, and then the images on the right. And here is like a whole little gallery of images, and here's our footer with different products. And so you have 4 columns in the footer. So that's actually, again, none of this is done by default. You have to create a style sheet to do this. So in fact we'll have 3 style sheets. So first of all, the display, and we mentioned before that the default is typically block. There are a few inline elements like the ahref, the hyperlink tag is inline by default. Most everything else, paragraph h1, is block, and there's a couple others. And so we will create a reset style sheet to make sure that the basics are taken care of, so that no browser will, interfere with your design, basically. And so you have a starter file in HTML03 folder tutorial. Start with this here and resave it as this. Now whenever you do that, I had questions about that. So the thing to do is to stay within this folder. So for example, you'll do the review project, let's say, or you'll do a case project. Work within that folder, rename the files as instructed. Don't pull them out of that folder. Keep everything inside that folder, because all the images, all the style sheets, everything that you need to make a complete web experience are in that folder. So when you submit, you just zip that folder like tutorial, and everything's inside of it. So don't pull any of those files, don't save them somewhere else, unless you make an entire copy of that entire folder. Okay, so this will become our reset style sheet, and these are your common elements on the page, article, footer, header, main, and this is what you'll say, display block. These will all be displayed block. And then as far as the font and background colors, etc., and margins, this is kind of a baseline here. So then on top of that, with our other style sheets, you'll do additional things. So this is to remove the bullets from the bulleted lists, and this is to remove the underline from the hyperlinks inside the nav, and this is the line height. So here is your entire reset style sheet, and so there are additional style sheets. There's a home and home HTML, so home style sheet and home page. So rename or resave those and enter the comments as instructed, and then within the HTML document, so again, right after the title element in the head section, always the same place, link to the 3 style sheets you have in this project. So always your reset style sheet first and then the other two. And so you would apply these. So I'm lecturing this. So what you're actually going to do, you may do a review and you will apply these same skills to your review. So again, this is our proposed layout. We've already discussed it. Now this is what they call a wireframe or a mock-up of your design. And so you see that here you have no columns, it's just an image. Then you have a navigation area with, again, no underlines, no bullets. Here you have two columns with the text up here, and then this column here divided into further columns, and then the footer subdivided into 4 columns. And so having horizontal navigation lists and vertical navigation lists, 2 of them. So it's rather complex. So there's 2 kinds of layouts, fixed and fluid. So fixed usually has fixed pixel numbers, and you can have fixed ones even if you use percentage. So just because you use percentage doesn't necessarily make it fluid, because what you can do is you can state that you want a center element floating in the middle and have, you know, basically some background around it. But typically the fluid is more modern, and it can now resize. Fluids layouts change with the screen resolution, and later you'll even learn to make the fluid layouts collapse, you know, when you see them on the phone and so on. So work with a fluid layout or an elastic layout. So an elastic layout, measurements are expressed in M. So M is the default font size on whatever device or page you're on. So if you double it, you know, that's like it'll double to a size that's double on the phone, double on the desktop, double on the tablet, etc. It's not a fixed number where you say I want this many pixels, which may look good on one kind of device and not on another. So they call this responsive design, and so the pages are responsive to the devices where you are looking at the page. So with width and height, oftentimes we express these widths and heights in percentages. So you can say set max width, and so here, so this would be something minimum width. This is the smallest the viewport will go, and typically when you do set up your web page to render on a phone, you would create an additional style sheet for, you know, mobile media. Okay, so in this style sheet you start by setting up the size of the page in the body. And now this is for the image, that's the header image. So inside the body where you have the header section, the image only in that header section, it's like the child of that, only that one at the top, width 100. So that'll allow you to place other images on the page, you know, because you don't want the other images to display the same way. So there you go. Page width is 95 in the browser window, and see the background peeks out. But the logo is 100% of the body width and no columns so far. Now this is how they will center. So this one was not centered, and so the style they will now apply with the auto will center this on the page. This here margin left and right auto will center it horizontally, and you'll see it when you save your file and look at it again. That image will be in the middle. So you can also style the element heights. So you can say the header should be, the body should be, and so on. So you can center elements vertically and horizontally. So there's a vertical align, and we're not doing anything yet, we're just discussing. And then floating, so there is such a thing as normal flow, normal document flow they call it here. So float is like a keyword or a style directive that will take it out of that normal flow and put it like on the left, put it on the right, put it where you want it basically. So float it to the margin, and everything, the text flows around it. So this was the original layout, because an image, let's pretend this is an image is a block display type element. So block means take up the whole row, so to speak, and then once you float, then the text will flow or wrap around it. So float left, so that's the original layout. You put 3 images on the page, they will automatically display like this, one below the other, and if you want them to be side by side, you would float them. And so now we're going to add this here. So in the header, again, the nav, that's a child of the header, the list items therein, li, the width. So this will make sure, because normally, so you recall that there was a navigation, horizontal navigation across, and it had hyperlinks, and they were spaced evenly apart. Normally the size of an element like that is dependent upon the text. So if you have like a short hyperlink with just little text, CSU, then the other one will rush right next to it, so to speak. But if you say, no, my hyperlinks list items need to be this far apart and floated left and so on, then they'll take up all the equal amount of room. So 20%, whether you need it or not. So like this. So otherwise home, the order here would be right there, and then in my account it wouldn't be spaced out like that. So that 20%, here it is. And this is the display. So this explains again how your navigation area will look just like this. And again, everything after this is going to be bad. You'll straighten out those next, so don't worry about what they look like. So once you apply a float, you may have to clear it. So the float positions are left, right, both, or none. So a value of left, you saw them, their example of using left to float 3 all in a row. So right, you can float an image over to the right side. The default clear is none, so both of them or both, so you can clear all floats. So here's clearing a float. So original layout like this, block, then float right, here it is. And see how everything is pulled to the side. If there's room, it gets pulled there. So if this box were to grow bigger, it might push this one down, but right now if there's room next to the image, it'll pull this up. But what if this is your footer? So then you have to say clear right, only then will this footer be pushed down, otherwise it may hang up there. So you can clear left, right, or both floats. So to float your columns, so this is now after your nav, so left column and right column. So you've got a width to them too. As you noticed already, the right column is much larger. That's where the images will go. And so the image is in the right column, display block, and so then there is going to be a small navigation area, and that's the width in the right column for that. And so right now you have left column here with the text, right column with this image, and this image takes over the entire column here, and then this is your navigation area below it, and each one of them gets 25%. So you've laid this out into these 4 columns. And so if you increase the padding, so you really should increase the padding. Let's look back there. So the reason you want padding is typically you don't want text to, you know, kind of crush on the margin like this and go all the way till the end. By default, it just tries to fill the space however it can. So typically you add some padding around it. Like, notice these hyperlinks have nice padding around them. So something like that. But as soon as you do, so here you see the padding, it looks good, except now it pushes your image down. It's forced to wrap down, and it, you know, messes up everything. So that's, now they're going into our box model, and we've already seen that. Remember, we said when you go and you inspect any web page's underlying code, you will be presented with a box model for that page so where you can see it. So see, for example, here is the content in the border box model. The idea always, they give you, you know, margins and padding, and then the element is all the way in the center here. And so again, a lot of these, when you see these sizings with the MOTS and the WebKit, those are for, you know, when all this was brand new, they had to force the browsers to be able to set this up properly. So in this case, if this is still an issue, add these to your style sheet. So this is the reset style sheet, in fact. And now your layout should have been restored, and now all you have to do is do the footer. So in the footer, again, you clear the float from previously, and then you divide the footer into 4 columns basically for the navigation and the section. And then there you see now where you have the navigation items, and then you can put text into those 4 columns, and there you go. And go ahead and set a background color for the footer, so RGB, red, green, blue, these values. And you know, whenever you type this thing, notice that your Notepad++ or Atom or whatever editor you may be using, it typically knows all these. So by the time you type background dash, it'll give you choices, and so you don't really have to type every scrap of this. So so a floated element, since it's out of the flow, it's kind of outside of anything, and so sometimes what they have is container collapse. So here the container is collapsed, so the container could be some kind of wrapper where you have applied a background image or a background color, and you would like it to be all around these floated elements, and it's not there. So this is the situation that you want. So how do we accomplish that? So you can set up a container. So for example, the footer, just so it stays where it's supposed to stay, you can clear both and display it as a table. So a table typically has columns and so on. So this will keep it from collapsing. So these are these little tips and tricks you can apply. So here we go. We've got basically a big container. We've got a little bit of background color on either side. It's centered. We've got the footer going all the way across. We've divided the middle section into a left and right column, and then further subdivided the right column into the large image here, and then this little mini navigation area, and with the 4 images. So it looks pretty nice. And so we will add, this is the reference to keep the container from collapsing. And so sometimes the negative space, sometimes you can put negative number techniques, negative pixels, like for example for drop shadows too. So sometimes negative numbers, negative space works, and we're going to learn more about that. So right now you should have your chocolate page, looking just like what you saw, and we'll stop here.